This is McLeod Insights, where we feature conversations with longtime transportation industry veterans who are now team members at McLeod Software. Our goal is to support and empower our customers by helping them learn about proven ideas and best practices that will have a positive impact on how they run their companies. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, Doug Schrar. I'm the Vice President of Growth and Special Projects for McLeod. And today I have Sajit joining me. He's one of our great data scientists here at McLeod, and we're doing our first ever podcast on AI. Really excited about the topic. It's one of the areas we expect to grow and to be very beneficial to McLeod customers. And I think our prospects are also looking for how they participate within AI and how their TMS helps them with that. So maybe, Sajit, talk a little bit about your experience. How did you get into data science, and did you think it would blow up like it has in the last 2 years?
Right. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Sujit Kumar here. Like Doug mentioned, I'm a data scientist here, and I've been here around 4 years now. Right before that, I was in grad school, doing my PhD in data science, and by then there was not a structured program for data science, at least for the postdoc or graduate level, maybe master's level, somewhat, not for PhD. So I got into it in a, non-traditional way, interdisciplinary program designed by some of my advisors at the University of Alabama. The merge between statistics, which is traditional applied program, and then getting into some industrial experience like internship, doing hands-on programming and data analyzing, providing insights to the stakeholders, things like that. So I got into it in a non-traditional graduate level program, but we see more and more PhD, master's level data science program these days. And to your question, Doug, I think there's still room for growth in data science, but I think there is a need for also definition of what data science is in the future, more streamlining, like computer science, right? Computer science is an umbrella of a lot of different programs within. I
Yes.
think data science is at that stage where it is an umbrella term. More than data science, I think AI is more of an umbrella term within which there are a lot of different branches, and everybody thinks about AI as this, magic wand, but underneath it has some data science, some machine learning, some data analytics, and a lot of things within.
So let's talk a little bit about this hype cycle we're in, right? So, do we expect the hype cycle to be much like what we've seen with blockchain? Is it going to be a hype cycle and we get to the pit of despair and there's some value for trucking and brokerage companies coming out of it, but not much? Or is this going to materially change the way we handle freight in the future?
Right. So, how I think of this hype cycle is we're currently in the generative AI hype cycle. So, AI is not new. It had different names in the past few decades, but now we're calling everything AI, like I mentioned a little bit ago, right? So, some parts of these tools or techniques like machine learning and reinforcement learning, deep learning have been around for a long, long time, but we have seen impactful use cases and applications in trucking and other industries, booming in the last decade or so. And there have been significant improvement within the AI industry also, right? Within the last decade, very many milestones that we have hit, like invention or the discovery of transformer technology that is behind the Chat GPT and Bard,
Yep.
things like that, improvement in image recognition. Those have been really hitting the market within the last decade. So we'll see growth in that regard, and that will bring about more useful applications within trucking and other industries in the upcoming days. It is not just the hype, there are real life application scenarios that we'll be seeing in the upcoming days. But it is very different than blockchain, to your point, right? It didn't come out of nowhere. There are These are tools that are backed by decades and decades of research, but how we got here is slightly different. So the compute, the storage, and the availability of the data that we see now, is very different than what it was like 2 decades ago, let's say.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, when did AI start? How long has AI been around? I know we're talking a lot lately about Bard, or we got to call it Gemini now, right? And generative AI, ChatGPT type solutions. But when did AI start?
Right. So it may be hard to believe for some folks, who thought AI is just new, brand new, a hot tool. But AI was first coined in 1956 or 57 at a symposium at Dartmouth. And then since then, it has gone through a couple of winters. So there have been development from the methodology, statistical development, but the companies or the industries that were trying to adopt AI did not adopted because of the disappointment that they didn't see growth because there wasn't enough data, or there wasn't enough compute, or it was so expensive to store the data, get the data, train the machine learning models, things like that, right? So we have seen two winters of AI in 1970s and 1980s, and we have the resources that were not there back then. We have them now, and that's why we see the growth that we're seeing in the last 5 or 10 years. And within last 3 years, we have seen the growth in ChatGPT or Bard, because we have so much data available, Google
Yeah.
publicly available text that are being used to train the GPT models, right? The ChatGPTs and Bards like. So
So you mentioned resources. Are you talking the ability to have clean data or the ability to process data? What are these resources you're talking about that we now have access some 70 years later from the onset of AI?
absolutely, I think both the availability of the data and the quality of data. But I think there is a lot of availability of data, but it's still hard to get quality data in any industry you go. People talk about how unstructured their data is, or how low quality their data is. I've been in some conferences within trucking, within health industry or financial industries, and everywhere you go, people have this notion that their data is very messy and it takes a lot of time to clean up the data. The general consensus is 80% of the time to do any AI or machine learning is spent on cleaning the data, gathering the data, make it ready for the model building exercises, right?
Right.
Even though we have the data, you have to spend a lot of time gathering the data, or cleaning the data, because we have not been traditionally trained to think about data as a resource that goes in building the model, right? So you collect the data without thinking how it can be used for the model building afterwards. So it becomes afterthought. Hey, we're going to use this data to build something great. But if you think about data collection process ahead of time, it's going to be a lot easier afterward to build these models, these AI tools. Um,
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. One of the things that we're working on here at McLeod is how do we allow that data to be connected to our vendors that are starting within AI and generating new solutions, how we create our own solutions, how we help embed decision supports. When you think about the importance of a TMS and having clean data within the system, um, talk to me a little bit about that and what our customers and potentially what our prospects should think about when it talks about AI.
Right, right. So, these sessions that we're starting at McLeod, the podcast, we're thinking this the main goal objective here is to demystify AI, right? To keep our customers informed in what the industry trend is and how they can tap into some of the resources from within McLeod, or collaboration with McLeod, or bringing in other vendor partners that our customers can tap into and get into the AI space, right? And when I think about AI, you know I would like to tell people, don't get bogged down with the craze or the hype of AI. Just think about why you want to do some of the things that people are talking about AI and implement that within your industry, right?
Okay.
Does it help you adopting this ecosystem of AI? Does it help you get faster, become more productive, things like that, right? If
Right.
there is a reason to do that, if there's a reason to adopt it, think about what can be automated, what can be predicted, the actions that you take at your industry. Like, there is driver retention, let's say. Can you predict driver retention using some of the data that is available within your driver table or driver database, right? So think about those and think about, does it make productive or impactful bottom line impact in your industry? And if the answer is yes, go about, how can you build some models, how can you collect data, how can you get some help either from a cloud or other vendors in preventing the driver retention,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So I would like to, bring this from the point of data collection, building model, and then execution. Does that help your industry or your company improve the bottom line from that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was our main goal with having our first AI conference here in Birmingham, was to bring brokers and carriers to the table to talk about practical use cases, to bring some vendors forward that actually have started playing around with what AI is. Um, as we move forward and we start to look at what we're trying to achieve, I don't think it dramatically changes, although the techniques, tools do. If I look at McLeod's mission, we try to be the most complete TMS. We try to drive business outcomes for our customers, and we stay engaged and service them very well throughout, interactions as a customer. So it doesn't matter if I use AI, the new AI, all these startups are talking about, the Chat GPTs, the Geminis, the co-pilots. Does it matter if I use those tools or if I use AI that's been around for 15 years to deliver the same business outcomes? What are your thoughts around that?
Right. Look, so as I mentioned, right, start with that why, right? If your objective is to predict um, driver retention or not, or look at the rate forecast for the future, it does not always have to be the new shiny tool. There are techniques that we have been using for decades that still do pretty good, and you can always use that. And as I mentioned earlier, there is generative AI, and you have been talking about it, right? There is general AI,
Yeah,
which is more traditional tools we have been using for a while, and the use case, it totally depends on the use case. It doesn't have to be, the new shiny stuff. I think of it like, if you go fishing, you don't have to use missile to go
yeah,
fish, right? You just need a simple rod and a line, and you can, fish pretty heavy fish, right? So I think from that regard, but depending on use case, how big your company is, how quality your data is, you might have to use the latest and greatest tool, because the impact is going to be massive if you are in that stage. But it takes a while to get there. You're going to have to use baby step, crawl, walk, and then
absolutely.
run, right? Um,
Absolutely.
Doug,
Let's
so
jump
I've
into some of those use cases, and let's talk through those. And one that always comes to mind with me. I've spent roughly 9 years of my life working at a company that had a pretty big fleet. Um, and one of our key metrics was speed to answer. So, driver had a question, customer had a question. How fast could we respond to that driver? If you think, especially from a driver standpoint, they only make money as they're driving down the road, right? They make very little in detention and layover pay. They truly make their money as they create value for the customer, for the carrier, and that's driving miles, safe miles down the road. How can AI help me uh, with base questions that are coming in from my drivers through telematics and get them the answers that they're looking for and it not be a delay to wait for a human to respond. I'm guessing that the majority of this information, for the most part, is already sitting within my TMS. What are your thoughts around that, Sajid?
Yeah, so we have been testing around a few things, experimenting on that regard, looking at the data quality and, 80% time spent on cleaning the data, things like that. And, you know, one of the challenges for the response between driver, dispatcher, or fleet manager is that there are multiple communication channels between the driver and dispatcher. It could be
Right.
phone, it could be mobile comm, it could be call or text or email, right? So there are multiple channels of communication. If you can bring those into one stream, so if there's a voice communication, you can transcribe those that can be used for machine learning training. If there are text or TMS messages or mobile call messages, they can all get into one place and you have this 360 view of the communication between driver and dispatcher. If you have those, you can get the machine learning training, and with these large language models that we currently have, like the chat gpts and llama, and there are many vendors that provide these models, we can use those and we can get into like the sentiment of what the driver is uh, asking, the entity or the item that driver is looking for, the order number or the tractor tracking or whatever it is. These models can um, identify that, parse those information, go back and look into those information in the database, and rather than a dispatcher searching in the TMS, doing manual queries in the databases, things like that, it can save minutes or 15-20 minutes of their time. These machine learning model or
Yeah.
AI model absolutely can do that a lot faster. But
So,
think about everything coming to one place, 360 view of the communication.
so as a fleet manager for base responses to questions, I no longer have to be in the loop. Solution could be the AI ultimately crafts a response, sends it to the driver, and it validates if it met the driver's need, yes or no. If it doesn't, right, it can always go back to that human in the loop, right, that dispatcher or fleet manager. But by taking that work off of them to begin with, we're freeing them up to do more valuable things, right?
Yep, yep, yep. Yeah,
And
that's sorry, go ahead.
yep, I'm guessing that's the same thing for the carriers. Or if I'm a broker and I'm interfacing with third party carriers, it's essentially that driver persona as well. But also customers are looking for updates on statuses of loads. The ability to haul the next load. Those are all, I think, good AI use cases as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, there are a lot of these use cases. I was just thinking about the large language models that can make a lot of these model building pipeline very short. So think about parsing the text or emails. In the past, we used to do these text analytics pipeline that had tokenization, that had parts of speech recognition, and then entities within those text recognizing. And then you can identify what the sentiment is based on certain keyword, things like that. But these large language models, you don't need those pipelines. You just pass in these massive text and they would identify what they mean, what is the context, what they are looking for. It's a lot shorter duration, and it can be applied not just in one use case, multiple use cases.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of one more question I had around that thought is we're talking very specific, fleet or brokerage use cases. Um, does it require an industry supplier or vendor to solve these, or will the bigger guys in the business, the Googles or the Microsofts, are they going to come in and try to assist in these views or these use cases?
Right. I mean, the Google, Amazon, and the Microsoft, they have a lot of developers and a lot of, resources to run these models. They have collected data for a long time. They have easy access to the data, right? So if you're thinking of the latest, greatest model, like the Chat GPTs or the Bards, they're definitely going to be the winner. They're going to lead the way, but they are also big on open source model that
Right.
we can tap into. Any industry, any developers can tap into, and start using, experimenting, and it doesn't have to be these big players, but they definitely contribute on how we build these models and how we deploy these models, right?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, these big guys will be the engine, the power behind the solutions, but you need the industry providers and the carriers and the brokers to really be the problem solvers in the deployment of the specific use cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. So some of the things that we do at McLeod and other companies, you're going to build machine learning AI tools, but if you are deploying it, you're going to have to rely on some of these. It may not be Microsoft or Google, but there are other vendors that you're going to partner with so that your models or tools are in the deployment area, right? So we're going to have some reliance to these big players, definitely, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. So our goal with this is to truly bring these insights, try to keep them boxed into 20 minutes, and then summarize a lot of these sessions at our UC in September, right? So, if you find this insightful, if you want to continue to listen to these podcasts, we definitely welcome to. We will be publishing them on a monthly basis. I guess to close out today and to think about the future, you talked a little bit about the winters of AI, right? And that there's been, winters in the past of, areas of disillusion. Um, what do we expect in the future? Are we going to see a pit of despair or disillusion in AI as we move forward?
Yeah, I think because of the hype and the craze around AI, we're going to see some dust settling down in the near future. That's definitely going to happen. But the impactful use cases in any industry, including trucking, it's going to keep growing, keep continuing, right? Because we have seen a lot of adoption of AI within our industry, and it's not just because of the hype, it's because we see the bottom line improvement, productivity boost, things like that, um, using machine learning AI. And I hope there is clarity in the future where people are not just using AI to be in the hype, but using particular umbrella or the particular term that applies, let's say machine learning or data science or data analytics, understanding that distinction and using the right term for the right usages in the future. But the growth, the impact, I think it's going to continue. And to your point, Doug, we're going to continue these conversation. We're going to bring product owners from McLeod, Power Broker, Loadmaster in the upcoming weeks or months up until UC. So, please reach out if you have questions. We'll be happy to answer those during those sessions. And thank you for your time and thank you for watching.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Looking forward to the continued conversation.